Welcome, everyone. We're on the page, and I'm your host, Jen Mulvihill. This episode's guest is a best-selling author of Cinema of Shadows, Spook House, The Wide Game, and Skull Full of Kisses. If that doesn't give you an insight that this is a horror author, I don't know what will. He is also the author of the critically acclaimed Legacy of the Gods series. Please welcome Michael West.
Hey.
Hi, how are you doing, Michael?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Has been a while, yes. It's this not doing conventions and seeing like people live is coming to an end, hopefully very soon.
Yes. Yeah, I hope that we can get past this soon and start doing conventions again. It's probably been about 2 years since I saw you at the ceremony, the award ceremony, I think.
Yes.
Of course, you
Yeah.
win so many awards, I can't keep track of them.
I'm more of a bridesmaid more often than I am a bride, but
I think you're being modest. Well, I like to find out a little bit more about my authors. And the way I do that is a little insight into your childhood. So, what I want to know is, what books intrigued you as a child? What were your favorites?
well, when I was a very young child, I read a lot of Ray Bradbury and uh, Richard Matheson, um, The Hobbit, things like that. And then as I got close, in more into middle school, that's when Stephen King got his hooks in me. Um,
Oh,
Started reading everything by Stephen King, and then when I was uh, junior, senior in high school, I started reading Clive Barker.
uh-huh.
So
Two of the
those,
top.
yeah, those were the big influences on me at the time.
So that's what I was going to ask is how you got into writing, or how you got into writing, but how you got into writing horror.
Well, I've always written. I've written short stories as long as I can remember. Really, took a lot of creative writing classes growing up. I really was more into film, so I would
Mhm.
write a lot of screenplays, um, and that's really how I got into writing professionally short stories and novels. Was that my imagination outgrew my budgets very quickly. So the only way to really see what I wanted to see was to write it as prose.
So that's right. You have a degree in telecommunications and film theory.
I do, yes.
Yes. So that kind of bled into that then. It helps you with your writing.
Um, well, everybody says that my writing's very cinematic, and that's why, because I'm seeing the movie in my head, and I want everyone to see the same movie that I'm seeing.
And you do when your writing is very descriptive and it does take you in. I kind of liken your writing to old school science fiction horror stories, which I love. And so
Well,
it's
yeah, and that's what I grew up on. So that's thank you.
so it does reflect in there. So when did you learn that language had power, that you could use these words to create these stories?
Well, I think it was probably around fifth fifth grade, maybe.
Wow.
We we I had written some stories, some spooky stories, and
Hmm.
got a chance to read them aloud to a large gathering of people, and uh, it had the proper reaction.
And you were like, "Hey, I could do this."
Yeah, I said, yeah, this is something that I want to explore.
Your Legacy of God series, your characters are unlike any characters I've ever read. I loved it, but where did you get that? I know everybody probably asked you this, but where did you get that idea for those characters?
Well, the my fiction actually usually starts with the characters.
Right.
usually some short stories and whatnot are more of a concept, an idea, a plot, but for the most part the novels really start with the characters.
Hmm.
And I had a dream one night, that became what's infamously known as the temple scene in the first novel, Poseidon's Children. And
Another one.
yeah, and I'm like, I woke up and I'm like, okay, how did we get there? What led us to that? So that's when I started talking to myself, as writers do, about
Hmm.
what the characters, who the characters were, their backstories, their motivations, um, what led them to that point, and where they might go from there. And that was really the start of that novel. It started off being more akin to, when I first started writing it. I was more akin to a American Werewolf in London meets Jaws,
Hmm.
and I I found it very. It was interesting that someone in one of the reviews on, it was either Amazon or Audible, uh, called it that, and so I was like, well, that's what it started out to be. So
So they nailed it, huh?
yes, it came through. It was a success.
And you just released the last book of that series.
Yes, that series is wrapped up with the fourth novel, Cronus's Return, which ties up all the loose ends. So it is a four-book series now. You have
Hmm.
Poseidon's Children, Hades' Disciples, Zeus Warriors, and Cronus's Return. It actually started off to be a trilogy, but after some, I do read reviews, and I do take criticism to heart. So there was some criticism about there being too much story in the first book. So I know.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, okay. So I decided to space it out a little bit more, and I broke one of the books in half. So that's why we ended up with four instead of three.
And that happens because I that happened with my series. I was like, well, basically, after the third was written, I was like, well, there's still more to the story. I got to finish this and tie up all the loose ends. So I know how that is.
Yeah, and that's why it took me so long to write the fourth book, because it's, I have books that are kind of loosely connected, where characters kind of cross over and reappear, but this was
Yeah.
the first time I've ever written a continuous story over multiple books.
Hmm.
And so to try to bring everything to a satisfactory conclusion was something that I was not used to doing.
Do you ever think about doing an accompanied book, like a cookbook, to go with it? Calamari.
But it's funny you should say that. One of the I did a book tour for Poseidon's Children when it first came out, and one of the stops on the tour was someone who would post recipes with each book, that went with each book, and it was a
Oh,
seafood recipe, and it was for crab cakes with Poseidon's Children, and so we did the whole interview with one of the characters from the book, in character, and then posted the the menu, and it was probably one of the most fun uh, blog stops I've ever had. So it was, but I haven't really thought about a cookbook. But one of the characters in the Legacy of the Gods is a writer.
mm-hmm.
Write what you know, right?
Right.
Um, and she writes smut, basically. She writes romance, but
Pays the bills.
I'm sorry.
It pays the bills, right?
Yeah, it does. It got her out of the book, so uh, she's doing better than me. But the some people have been after me to write her novels that are mentioned in the books. So it's
Oh,
some,
that'd be interesting.
yeah, it's something I've toyed with. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, you have some interesting scenes in those books, I have to say. So, wow. That
Yeah, yeah. Those tend to be the fan favorites. I get a lot of mail on those. Basically, growing up as a teenager. You'd watch, like, The Howling and American Werewolf in London, and other shapeshifter movies and
Mhm.
whatnot, and read the books that they were based on, and some of the love scenes got to be kind of interesting, and I kind of took that to the nth degree.
Well, what was the one of the hardest scenes you've ever written? I mean, whether it's a love scene or not, was there?
Right. Well, probably the hardest scene I ever wrote was the death of a character in the final book.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and it's I knew it was coming. I've known for years that it was coming, but when it finally came time to write it, I wrote it, and then I read it and rewrote it and read it and rewrote it,
Oh,
and
my.
just because I didn't. It happens during the course of some action, so it's not like I could dwell on it. You couldn't really
Uh-huh.
pause, and the characters couldn't pause, which was one of the horrific things about it. Is that here comes this blow to everyone, and they really don't have time to absorb it. They just kind of have to roll with the punches and go on. But because it was someone that people knew and loved, I couldn't just kind of gloss over it either. So
Right.
had to find the right balance. And it was hard for me because it's not a death that is arbitrary. It has a point. It basically is this, you know the apex of this character's arc.
Mhm.
But I didn't want it to feel like it was just, you know killing someone to be killing someone. um
Right.
but from the response I've gotten, it has hit the right tone. So I've been
Had
gratified
to
by that
had to mean something. Well, I just got the book, so no spoilers, right?
too. I'm trying not to spoil it for anyone, but hey, it's a dark fantasy series
It's expected.
book. Somebody's gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, speaking of your writing, we've got a couple of videos to show. Let's roll a video of some promo you've got on your books.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a shark attack victim, Mr. Hayes? You're going to see.
Are you absolutely certain it was a shark?
Several sharks, actually.
Several.
Yes. There are at least 3 distinct bite patterns.
I take it you know who I am. As you can imagine, men in my position receive death threats from time to time. Those threats can sometimes include our families. I need you to re-examine the body and be absolutely certain of what's in that report. I have to be absolutely certain this was a shark attack.
That's odd.
What?
There are marks around the eye socket that suggest the eye was clawed out.
Clawed or gouged?
Well, either way, it was done post-mortem. And obviously, the sharks didn't do this.
Why not?
Sharks don't have claws, Mr. Hayes.
And you're still absolutely certain sharks did this?
Look at these wounds. No man could do this.
You'd be surprised what a man can do.
Wow.
That gives you a taste of what's in the book.
That is pretty intense. I think you need to make a feature film on that one.
Well, that's what a lot of people say. A lot of people say that that when they're done reading it, that they want to see the movie or they want to see the TV series. So hopefully that's something that happens in the future, but we'll see.
That would be awesome. Yes. So what is the other clip that we have? What is it? What is this promo for?
The other clip that you have, I believe, is the trailer for my short story collection, my first short story collection, which was Skull Full of Kisses.
Oh, yes, definitely. Can we roll that? That's awesome. That's pretty intense too.
Yeah. That one was a hard one to kind of encapsulate in a book trailer, since it was multiple short stories. But I think we found the right tone.
Well, yeah, definitely. It leaves a lot to the intrigue. You really want to read it. It's the mystery of it.
Yes.
You're like, what is that? It's kind of like the first sentence that you have to put in your novel that makes the reader want to keep going.
Right.
That's what
Well,
gives you
yeah,
that.
and my short story collections are always a lot of fun for people, because it is a really, I tend to organize them in such a way that there's no two stories that are alike. There's some pure horror, there's some sci-fi, some fantasy. It's I liken them to really good seasons of the Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah.
So there's a little bit of everything.
Well, I love that. Absolutely. So what are you working on now?
Well, now I'm, you know, what a way to spend the pandemic other than to switch publishers. So I'm I'm working to get all my novels out again with my new publisher, which we've got all the novels and the short stories out except for Spook House. So right now we're working on getting Spook House back out.
Mm-hmm.
And then also I've got some other short stories that I've been pushing to the back burner that I'm going to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I plan to go back to the Harmony, Indiana setting for some of my horror novels and do another novel there.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So no like mini films or anything in the future or screenplays or
I never say never. Never say never.
never say never, huh?
I've been talking to some people. There's some interest in maybe doing some short films based on some of the short stories. So those talks are happen from time to time. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Count me in. I want to see them.
I
So
want to
tell
see.
me, yeah. So tell me about your writing space. What is it like?
Well, you're looking at part of it.
Yeah, I see that.
It's a room filled with horror movie posters and movie stills and some figurines and memorabilia from films.
Hmm.
And so it's one of those places like I always saw like Ray Bradbury's office,
Yes,
and
yes.
just where you could look just any direction and get inspiration for something, and that's kind of what I was striving for. So there's a little bit of everything in here, and I have a kind of a reliquary of like the puzzle box from Hellraiser and
Oh, wow.
the the Lucille bat from Walking Dead, and just a lot of different items that I can pick up and play with and get an inspiration from.
And I love that. I have the same kind of office, a little bit of everything in it to inspire. So
Yeah,
I think a lot of there's quite a few authors, but I think it goes both ways. It's a 50-50 because some like it absolutely clean and neat and nothing in there. And then other people like us like to have all these little things around us.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
And when I work, I can't work in silence. I can't work in a void. I usually have to have some sort of music, film scores, or 80s
Hmm.
music, something playing, something. Not so much something with words, unless it's something songs I've known forever and don't they just become kind of background noise. But
Right.
a lot of film scores, and a lot of times it depends on the type of scene I'm writing. I might have something more action oriented or something spooky or whatnot
Hmm.
going on just to put me in the mood.
Do you post a music list? Like I've seen some authors post music lists on there for each
I've
book.
done that occasionally. I've if you go back in my feeds, the internet is forever. So
Yeah.
if you go back on my feeds, you'll see what I'm listening to and the playlist for the day, things of that nature.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, well, I have my signature question I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to set you up for this. Okay,
Okay.
so you're trapped in a house. There's been a snowstorm or a pandemic or something very unusual like that,
Okay.
and you have all the survival
That
gear.
happened.
I know, right? You have all the survival gear that you need, but what are the three things that you want or need to have for comfort or whatever?
uh, my coffee,
Okay.
my collection of Blu-rays and 3D Blu-rays. I'm big into collecting 3D Blu-rays,
Okay.
and My dog.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Because I'm assuming the laptop was in the survival stuff.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So other than the laptop.
And I guess if you have a CD player in your laptop that can play your Blu-rays.
Right.
I love asking that question because a lot of people everybody has a different answer.
Oh yeah.
So it's awesome. It's a good question. Well, any advice for authors, aspiring authors?
The advice I normally give to up and coming authors is it's kind of two pieces of advice. One is get people to read your stuff who don't necessarily like your stuff. And what I mean by that is if you're a sci-fi writer, get somebody to read it that doesn't normally like sci-fi, or if you write horror, get somebody to read your stuff that doesn't normally read horror.
Mhm.
The reason I say that is because as fans of a particular genre, we tend to be forgiving of the conventions of those genres. And people who may not like horror, sci-fi, or fantasy won't be as forgiving, and they'll take you to task, and they'll say, why would they go into the spooky house? Nobody in the right mind would go into the spooky house. and so you tend to get a lot of feedback that helps you to make it more believable, more relatable to people. And if you're seeking advice from people, the number two bit of advice I give is be willing to take it. Yeah, you have to, as a writer, you have to learn to kill your children. You can't fall so in love with something that you've written that you don't see yourself making any changes to it, because you're going to constantly be making changes to it. I mean, there's stuff that's out there on the show now that I read, that I wrote, that if I had another pass at it,
you'd rewrite it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, where can we find your books? Where
you can find links to all my books on my website, which is bymichaelwest.com, bymichaelwest.com. I have a store on Amazon. My publisher is Hydra Publications, and they have my stuff. So those, and then I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now Slasher.
that's a new one, huh?
Yeah, that's a new one that Tim Wagner roped me into. So.
Oh, wow, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciated it. We're out of time, unfortunately. If we have more questions, we'll just have to circle back.
There you go. You're welcome in my writing space anytime.
Well, thank you. Until then, everyone, please keep reading, keep writing, and we'll be able to change the world one story at a time on the page. Thank you.